Chapter 6 is on phablets. What do you mean by that?
By phablet, what we basically mean is a mobile device. Like it could be a phone, it could be a tablet, but the mobile device is now a very important component of any IT infrastructure within an organization.
Why are tablets so important?
Well, gone are the days where a company gave you a PC sitting on a desk that was attached to their corporate network. They gave you a username and password to log on with. That's a bygone era. Now what we're finding is most connections to corporate infrastructure is from devices that in many cases are external to the company. They could be somebody working at home. They could be somebody at a coffee shop who just wants to log on to get the email. It could be from a device that can be authenticated, like a PC that gets registered. It could equally be from a smartphone that somebody's just using to access your facilities. All of this access needs to be managed in some way.
What sort of issues do you see in the adoption of mobile devices?
There's the obvious issues of like screen breakages. In fact, I've done a little study, and anecdotal evidence shows that about 10% of young people's smartphones have a broken screen at any point in time. So there's those sorts of issues. But really, there's also things that we need to worry about when it comes to mobile devices is what is it that we're going to do to make sure that that person that's connecting to our network really is the person they purport to be. If we allow a user to use their phone to connect to our services and they store information on that phone, what do we as an organization want to do in terms of managing that information? Do we want to be able to wipe it externally? How do we actually want to manage our applications that our staff and contractors are using? How do we want to put them on the phone? How do we want to connect them to our facilities? And what do we want to do in terms of allowing that person to get access to what can be sensitive information? So all of these things need to be managed. We need a mechanism to say, okay, well, for this particular confidential document, we're only going to allow it to be accessed in a particular way.
When corporate and user requirements differ, how is that resolved?
Corporations want users to use their own phones because they don't have to then provide them. Users, in many cases, don't want the corporation to provide their corporate phone because now they've got to carry two. So any organization needs to determine how are those two things going to be brought together. Are they happy with users using their own phone for corporate business? Are users happy having the organization put a protected area on their phone so that they can indeed connect to the organization's sensitive information? These issues have to be worked out. Once they're worked out, you've then got to decide, well, if a user is going to be using their own phone, are you going to compensate them in some way for that? There's no right or wrong answer here. Each organization has got to determine how they do it themselves. One interesting solution by the Snowy Mountain Hydro Authority, the scheme, they purchased, I think it's about 500 mobile devices now that are used throughout the organization because they've got generators that are in remote locations. They put Wi-Fi through them all. They've issued to their staff mobile phones so their staff can participate in activity regardless of where they are. So a good solution, but they determined they didn't want users doing that with their own phone, and so they issued them a corporate device for that.
So what would you say are the basic requirements for the adoption of tablets in organizations?
I guess the main thing is making sure that organizations have some sort of governance over the use of mobile devices. There's a need to determine what sort of encryption to use on a device. If you're going to put sensitive information on someone's phone, you want to make sure it's encrypted so it can't be accessed by those that shouldn't have access to it. In terms of the device management, we've talked about that. Do we want to have the situation where we register all devices and control what information can be put on them? In terms of the corporate controls, what sort of controls do we want on those devices. Generally speaking, users are okay with using their own phones for corporate business, provided it's not intrusive, and provided it helps them in the things that they need to do. So if they need to access systems from home, if it gives them a better work-life balance, users will typically appreciate the fact that they can use their phone, but that means the organization must put those controls in place.
What about the future? Where do you see this technology going?
In terms of the future, it can be, you're sort of crystal ball gazing. I think there's a number of things that are obvious. There's two ways now of attaching a mobile phone to, or a mobile device, it could be a tablet, to corporate systems. One is through a browser-based approach using HTML5, and there's good security that can be placed around that. The other is to develop a native app. So it's an application that sits on the phone that connects to the corporate network and typically can be made more secure, provided the design and development of the application adheres to certain principles and adopts the secure protocols. In terms of the what we're seeing in the communication space, G5 has been optimized for data. So we're going to see the new telco services really pushing the data capabilities of a mobile device. Less voice, more data is the future when it comes to mobile devices, and we're going to see them used in ways we can't imagine at the moment. Mobile devices are going to be very important to us going forward. In terms of the technology, we do need some changes there. So voice recognition is going to become more and more important. Right now we use it for just basic commands. We're going to be using it for recording, as we're going to have the voice to text capabilities. We're going to use it for voice prints. Some organizations now actually will record a voice print, and when you try and authenticate to a secure service, they'll do that on the basis of your voice print. So that's going to be important. Gestures, let's face it, nobody wants to be able to type in or have to type in a password from a mobile device. So now having with the accelerometer within mobile devices, you can have a unique log on via a gesture. So these are the sorts of things we're going to see coming. Beyond that, virtual reality is going to be very important. So there's a number of areas that organizations need to keep abreast of and decide what technology they're going to adopt, what will help them run a better organization. And it's going to be a lot of fun.